Hello, everyone, to the Silver Lining after a long hiatus. I'm Kevin Ashley.
I'm Nicole Littlefield.
And I'm Danny Oliveris.
So, how have y'all been? It's been a minute.
It's been a while, Kevin. I've missed you and your beautiful face. How have you been, Kev?
I've been good. I've missed you and your BoJack profile pic. And Nicole, how have you been?
It's been one crazy ride. School has been kicking my butt, but it's been going.
You've been really busy with the whole speech and debate, right?
Yeah.
Yes. This week is actually our nationals, so we're competing all of this week. Like literally, we start tomorrow, and it doesn't stop until Sunday. So it's all week. I'm super excited, but I'm also very nervous. So yeah.
Is this like nationals or novice nationals?
Phi.
Okay, that's nationals.
Whatever that means to you.
Yeah, Phi's nationals. That's the nationals I was deprived of because of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, I was able to go to novice nationals and where I was one of the finalists and during my tenure on speech and debate. But yeah.
Look at Kevin, man. Look at Kevin.
It's one of those things, like I'm honestly really excited for you because like this should be a really fun experience, even if it's entirely online. And I just know you're gonna do well.
I am so excited. I've put so much effort into it. I'm ready. Like, it's both scary because this is the last competition that we're doing for the season. Like, after this, speech is over. So gotta put everything I have into these performances because this will be the last time I'm doing it, and it's so sad.
And just imagine,
what? Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, and just like imagine, like all of like the skills you've gained from this. Like, it's not. First of all, public speaking is hard in like any category. I'm not sure if Brandon made the joke, but he's where I got this phrase from. Where there are the two biggest fears in America. The first fear is public speaking. The second fear is death, meaning people would rather be in the casket than give the eulogy. So there's so many like layers on this and there's so many things involved with it, and you are doing a public speaking event in front of like crowds of individuals being judged by people who've been doing this longer than you, and also in an online format which adds a whole new like layer of difficulty upon it. Like, you're doing so good and I love to see your progress.
Do you think it's easier doing it online as opposed to like in person? Because like I imagine in person you're doing it in front of an actual crowd, right?
Yeah.
And while you're over Zoom, I mean, it might be less daunting.
I think it has its perks and it has its disadvantages. There's some things that you can get away with being online, like, you know, you can literally turn off your camera and just not pay attention if you really want to. So I think that like, it has its challenges, but also has its perks. I'm trying to think of like, really the biggest thing is like that you're not in front of actual people. Like when people are actually watching me, it's so weird.
I remember when I was like last year when I was still a part of it, freaking one of the many things that they taught us and made sure that we were like really good at is being like very like intentive, like active listeners when other people were performing. Because like our goal is to ultimately beat them, but you got to be like civil while doing it, you know? And if you're an excellent listener, there have been instances where like the judges also like pay attention to that and factor that in when they're like ranking the ballots, which I found it pretty interesting. Like if you're like a pretty disrespectful listener, you could have gave like the best performance there, but a judge would still like give you the worst score because you should have been polite to your fellow opponents.
How did you deal with it, Kevin? Like, because
Yeah,
you said
there
you were
are
up. Go ahead, Nicole.
There are some things like that. Like, I know that some of the judges are really upset that we don't have to have our cameras on during it. our speech coaches want us to have our cameras on and want us to be attentive listeners still. So I try as much as I can. You know, sometimes I have to go use the bathroom, and so like obviously I'm not just gonna leave the screen. I'm gonna like turn my camera off.
Yeah.
But it's hard to pay attention just because like you're already on screen for so long that it's that much harder to just sit there and listen to a speech, especially if it's someone who you've seen several times. Like they always improve and they always get better, but it's just like, I've heard you say this 3 times already. Like I don't want to listen again.
It's like, and human attention spans are always so weird too, because like in person, what keeps us attentive is the fact that the person that we're talking to is always doing something that like we can pay attention to. But over a screen, it's, well, 2-dimensional, and it's very difficult to keep track of that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Kevin, how did you like manage being in front of a crowd, you know? And how do you think it would be like different opposed to like doing it online?
Well, the way I usually handled it is I managed to learn at a very young age that like public speaking, although difficult, is something that I could personally do if I just shoved myself into those type of social situations. Like I get very anxious and very nervous. Like if you look at me after I'm like done talking in front of a group, I'm like visibly shaking. Like I have like my hand cannot stay still when that happens. However, I've managed to like redirect that nervous energy into giving a speech, which is how I've managed to make it work. And I found it difficult to do in an online setting because my attention wasn't there, which is why I'm like so happy to see like Nicole being able to do it, like something that I just could not in, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you manage to do it, Nicole?
Honestly, I have no idea. That has been what I've been saying this entire season is I don't know how I'm still able to compete on speech, work, and do schoolwork. I don't have that good time management, so I'm really not sure how I'm pulling it off. But it's been a very stressful semester trying to balance all of these things. It's been a lot of fun though. Like I love each and everything that I do. The Courier gives me so much experience with writing and editing, and I really appreciate that. And then speech, even though it is virtual and I am not speaking in front of an actual audience or like people with actual physical eyes on me, it's still nice to kind of learn how you have to be present in what you're speaking. Like so many people, when you give a speech, you just kind of go on autopilot and you don't really think about what you're saying. And you can't do that in speech. You have to be present and you have to mean the words you say because you chose those words for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys ever improv like midway through your speech? Like, you know, like midway through, like you think of something and then you throw it in there last minute?
All the fucking time. But that's because the events that I did required improvisation. Like I did extemporaneous speaking, which is like you have 30 minutes to come up with a 7-minute speech with citations, and then both styles of debate, which depending on the style of debate, you have between 15 and 30 minutes to make up your case. So everything that I did was always like on the fly, improv, thinking in the moment about how I'm going to go about it. How about you, Nicole?
I don't improvise because that is one thing that like with being online is very helpful is that if you don't know your speech, you can literally have it in front of you, which is cheating. So it's fine. But like if we were in person, I would probably improvise a little bit more if I just didn't know something. But with the categories I'm in, unlike Kevin, where he literally has to improvise or like come up with things on the spot, all of mine are already written before I even go out to perform them. So it's kind of bad if I'm improvising.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, and something to go back to the initial point when it's talking about you have to have meaning behind your words. That's like my favorite part of speech and debate, I think, because not only does it teach you how to like form an argument, say your piece, and have like convincing reasoning and logic behind the things that you say, but also it teaches you how to put emotion behind your words, because you can have a fairly convincing argument, but if you say it just monotone, slow, and easy for people to understand, yet hard to be attentive to, then it's very difficult for like anyone to get the impact of your speech. While if you're very like dynamic and like emotional, and you put that like feeling into the things that you're trying to say and really emphasize those points, that can go further. And I find that to be another fascinating part of like just public speaking.
I don't think it even has to do so much with how like that they can't understand what you're saying when you're saying it monotone. It's just that they don't care. Because when you think about it, when you're listening to someone who's monotone, it's so hard to pay attention no matter how much you try. If there's no vocal variance, and if they don't sound excited about it, why should you be?
Exactly. It's like, why should I pay attention to the topic you're talking about, even if it's like a meteor is about to hit the planet and we're all gonna die? Like, why should I care if you can't say it in a way that like sparks my attention?
If you don't say it like the meteor is going to kill us all, we're not going to believe that the meteor is going to kill us all.
Exactly. You're just another crock on the sidewalk if you think that not saying
it's gotta be
in an emotional
exciting.
way. Yeah.
It's got to be very exciting to be able to go up there and like give a speech where like you're literally convincing someone to see your point of view. You know what I mean? Like you're literally, that's the whole point, right? You're convincing them like, look, I'm right, and this is why, you know?
I'm right, they're wrong, here's why. That's basically debate in a nutshell. It's
That's
rinse and
only
repeat,
some of
I'm
them.
right, they're wrong.
Yeah.
As for other events, like, what were your events again, Nicole?
I'm in informative speaking, poetry interpretation, and me and my friend Annie Wallander just started duo interpretation. Like,
Ooh,
we literally just finished it last week. And I'm super excited for the duo because there aren't very many people doing duo in this virtual environment.
So
we actually have a really good shot of like, I have no idea. That's weird about the duo, is that you like, there's a waiting room, so you don't actually see anyone perform. Only the judge gets to see the duos perform. Because if everybody is in one room, you won't be able to see the two performers. Like it'll be harder to find them. So they just like, you can't watch any of the duos. So I have no idea what any of them are about. So it's gonna be really weird.
I'm excited for you. Duos have an energy all on their own. So seeing like, I hope that the chemistry between you and your friend is like on point.
I mean, it should be, because we've been friends for years. So I think that will definitely help it, because, people who may have never met in this online environment might be doing duos, whereas hopefully we will show that we have that chemistry, having been friends for so long.
Yeah, to kind of like, here's my terrible segue into our main topic here. Like, the whole convincing someone of your point of view. Kevin, how do you like handle that when you're talking to someone like a family member or a friend or somebody, when you're talking to them about like, hey, this is happening in the news, and like, this what's happening is wrong, and here's why?
Well, when it comes to like talking to people like in person, that I feel like it's doable. However, if you're trying to convince someone of your point of view over the internet, I just say you're already failing. Like, if you're trying to do it in a comment section, that's a terrible idea. If you're trying to do it over video with voice, that's a better idea, because it's easier to pick up on like inflection and tone and whether or not someone's making a joke in a statement if you hear their voice than if you're typing out in a comment. Because in a comment, especially like a tweet in particular, it's so easy to like misinterpret what a person's saying, or to take the most bad faith, uncharitable like stance on what they're saying and just run from there, because you can just it's terrible.
Especially because people don't use proper grammar. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not great. Like,
I'm terrible with grammar. You've read my
I
articles.
don't use proper. I don't use proper grammar all the time, but when you're like trying to convince people things and you don't know how to write a sentence in a way that people will understand it, it's just bad.
Mm-hmm. That is why I stand by the belief that I can convince most people on my positions if I had like a one-on-one talk with them in person than I can like over the phone or in a comment section or through text or whatever. Because like I feel like I'm a more convincing person if you can hear and see me and see my body language on top of that than if it's just like not if it's without those factors.
Yeah. If you're just like, you know, going back and forth like in a comment section, like you're saying, you know, you can't tell what that person's actually saying. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it might sound like they're being a complete asshole when in reality it's just that's just how they're typing, you
Yeah.
know. And if you were to actually sit across from them face to face, you'd say, "Oh, he's saying the exact same words, but he's not trying to be an asshole. That's just, you know what I mean?"
Plus, when you have conversations on the internet, all sense of nuance goes right out the fucking window.
Yeah.
Like nothing is a nuanced conversation anymore about anything.
There's the whole fact that like if you're face to face, there's always that % chance of you getting hit in the face. You know,
so you don't want to be too abrasive. So
you have to be a little bit more, you know, contained, I guess.
Because like you don't want to be too abrasive because you don't want to get into a fight, but simultaneously you want to like not be too nice because you're trying to assert your point. But over the internet, you completely lose that like I don't know, the violence element of it all. So it just you can be as abrasive as you want, and it doesn't really matter.
Sometimes too, it's just hard to put your point into actual words. Like it's easier just to say things than have to figure out how to form a well-written sentence that other people will understand, which is another reason why I don't like try to convince people through the internet.
It's like if you're arguing in a comment section, it doesn't matter what side you're arguing or who you are, you've already lost. No one's mind has ever been changed in a comment section. That's all I gotta say. And speaking of changing people's minds, so currently, as y'all are probably aware, the George Floyd trials are going on, and they're currently in the process of figuring out whether or not the police officer that knelt on his neck for 8 minutes actually killed him, or did his bad health kill him?
Oh, it was like 9 minutes and 30 seconds. Like it was a long time. It was closer to 10 minutes.
And recently, from the little snippets of the trial that's been going on that I've saw so far, like a police chief or trainer or someone who's like in the police force was like, yeah, that like kneeing on his neck thing for like 8 minutes was entirely an unnecessary use of force. And a doctor came out today and said, yeah, we conclude that he died of asphyxiation. Like one thing that I despise so freaking much about like the online right in their ways and how they justify virtually like anything that's done to a minority is how they went out of their way to talk about how, oh, George Floyd didn't die from the fucking knee on his neck. No, he died from all the drugs in his system. Although there's 1,000,001 like doctors, coroners, and like other like videos made talking about that, yes, there were drugs in his system, but there wasn't enough drugs in his system to kill him. And the coroner like there was an independent coroner and the coroner that got to him the first time that looked at his corpse, and both of them came to the same conclusion that he died because of the officer. Like all factors involved in that, he would still probably be alive today if the officer hadn't knelt on his neck for 8 minutes cutting off his air supply.
Is the main guy sorry, Nicole, is the main guy who was kneeling on his neck, is he the only one on trial, or are they all 4 officers?
Yeah, those are the trials. Those are the trials that are going right now. So Derek Chauvin, those are his trials for the murder of George Floyd. All of the cops that were there got fired, but Chauvin is the one who is
he's the only
like
one
who has charges
charged
against him. As far as I'm aware, because he was the one who there are video recordings of him kneeling on Floyd's neck. And it was Lieutenant Richard Zimmerman, I'm pretty sure, who said that it was totally unnecessary. And he was also talking about how like there was no need for them to do that, especially because he was already handcuffed. He was in the prone position. And so the risk of him hurting any of the police officers went way down as soon as they handcuffed him. And that procedure, typical police procedure is as soon as they are handcuffed and in prone position, you're supposed to make them stand up because being on your chest can be dangerous. So I don't know where he got the idea to kneel on this guy's neck, but it's not police procedure.
So like, what would you guys say that is then? Would you say that's just like plain stupidity, like, or is it actual racism? Is it like combination? Is there other like, why would like, okay, because like when you have a guy on the ground, right, you handcuff him. The next step is like, let's put him in the fucking car, right? Why the hell is this guy's knee still on his neck for fucking, this fucking long? I just don't understand. Like, what was, like, what's going through your mind at that point? You know what I mean? And you have backup.
Well,
right? You have the guys there with you. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, what is
his
that?
lawyer is trying to say that it was, what was it? That he would like protection of life or death situation, and that he was doing it by any means necessary, like to protect his life by any means necessary. But the thing is that Floyd was not restraining once he got to the ground or once he was handcuffed. I'm not really sure at what point, but the lieutenant was like, yeah, I reviewed the videos and there was no reason for them to have taken these measures, especially because Floyd was not resisting.
Yeah. But like, that's just it's so exasperating because like it's so weird how this is like just the reality of the situation, the callousness that so many of them have for just human life. And
yeah,
I understand that policing is an incredibly hard job. Like, I get that. I will never dispute that point. They do things to see the worst of humanity every single day. Like, they go out there and they do the shit that they know they're gonna get hate for. And I can understand how that will eventually like lead individuals to being like more callous and cynical towards a lot of things. Like, it makes sense. However, there comes a point where you're like, because when you're a police officer, you're a public servant. Like, your purpose is to serve the public. So not only do you have to treat them equally and fairly, but you also just have to deal with the fact that they're going to be dicks to you, and you can't be a dick back. Like, I get it, that's the human response, but if you chose that profession, you can't be an asshole back because you're the one with like the like legal ability to fucking kill them, you know? When it comes to like so many things with policing, there's just like I empathize. I really do. But if you're like concerned or constantly frightened of the public you're supposed to be serving, then you really need to find a different profession.
Right. Like, I think, like, how you're saying, I definitely
like you said,
Go ahead, Nicole.
Like Kevin said, I definitely have a lot of not necessarily respect. I mean, I try to respect police officers, but it's becoming more and more hard. But I
lost all my
empathize with them because they're not all bad, and there are. Oh, that's a story for another day.
Yes, that's a story on childhood trauma.
Yes, but I definitely think that a lot of police officers do go into the career thing like loving it and wanting to make a difference, but then you just get a lot of bad seeds that make them have this really bad image. But there's just instances like there was literally another police officer in the Miami area this time that knelt on a woman's neck literally after the situation with George Floyd. So it's just like, I don't know if it was stupidity or what, but I don't know. Like, it's these type of things that just make you go, why? why would you do that? Who's training these people? Like, I just have so many questions.
Mm-hmm. I'm personally of the belief that like the concept of a good cop doesn't really exist. Like, and I say that because I feel like all good cops have either resigned or have been forced to quit or were fired at this point because they are the ones who like report the bad cops, and because of how police culture currently is, they're labeled as like snitches and they don't get like protections. Like people, when cops report on the other ones and don't uphold the whole blue wall of silence thing, like their workplace life becomes a living fucking hell where like their colleagues either don't respect them anymore, refuse to talk to them. If they're in like a dangerous situation and need backup, their calls can get ignored. They get demoted, they get pushed off into desk work, or just like they have so many retribution things that happen to them when they report bad behavior that all good cops are either forced to resign or are fired. I think the police force currently is comprised up in like a 90% complacent police officers, 10% bad. And we're talking about like on a national level, where you have like the bad apples aren't a lot, but there's enough of them there, and the other 90% refuses to like report them because they don't want to feel any retribution about it. So the like 90% complacent, 10% bad is the way I tend to see police officers. None of them good.
I don't know. I don't know if I watched too many movies or whatever, but like whatever happened to like IA and stuff, you know what I mean? Like whatever happened to internal affairs and shit like that. Like, is that still a thing or what?
I would imagine that programs like that usually tend to get cut, like budget wise.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
even if they exist, they're not exactly all that effective because they don't have any funding.
Yeah. I think it's very important to point out how you said that, like,
and if
Danny, you
ahead,
go.
Nicole.
Oh, never mind.
Is she there? I don't know if she's there.
No, she's probably like flagging. Finish your thought.
Yeah. I already forgot.
No, you're making a point about something that I said.
Yeah, I think it's important to like point out that it's not it's not that there's a lot of bad cops. It's just more of like it's that basically, right? That there's a lot of cops who just won't report on the shit that they do see, you know, and I don't know. I think there should be a way to like change that, because I do have respect for cops, you know, and I don't think that all cops are bad, but it definitely is that where like, you know, if, like those other guys that they're watching this dude basically cut off this other dude's air supply, right? And it's like, why are they doing shit? Like, you know, why aren't they like, hey man, like enough is enough, you know? Like you're at a bar, your buddy's talking shit, you go up to me like, all right man, like, you know, you've had too many, like let's get out of here, let's leave, you know? Why isn't there that?
I mean, I think that also feeds into the fraternity culture that a lot of police departments have, partly because of their unions. And oh god, police unions. I'm usually a fairly pro-union person, but police unions are some of the worst fucking things. And when it comes like the fraternity culture of it all, when it comes to, like policing, that's why the whole blue wall of silence exists, and like they always talk about like brotherhood and sisterhood while a part of them, because they see each other as like, well, a family, instead of just treating their job as like the job it is. And for that reason, they don't exactly want to be mean or like report someone for bad behavior when they know that, like, one, there'll be consequences for them doing it. And they also want to maintain that whole like, well, we're all a team, so if one of us messes up, we all back each other up, when that should not be the case whatsoever.
I think this world is just a crazy and scary place, and no one knows how to survive in it. This is such a hard topic because I am not like Kevin, where I have no respect for police officers. I do definitely have some respect for them. I don't know how I feel or where I stand anymore because of how much bad news has been coming out.
I feel like me saying no respect was a bit of an exaggeration. Like, my experience when I was 10 was definitely very informative, but For the most part, I respect the job in the sense that it's something that I couldn't do. Like, I could
Yeah.
not see myself doing that job, and I know it's an incredibly difficult job to do, which is why when it comes to things that I can't see myself doing, I always have like a large amount of respect for the individuals who can, because, well, it takes effort. But simultaneously, where I start losing that respect is around like the police culture and just like how gun ho they tend to be in a lot of situations. Like, for
I
fuck's sake,
think it's more like individuals though. Like, wouldn't you say it's more like individuals? Because like
I would
I've
say it was
un-
individuals if these cases didn't happen so frequently. Like, if these were like cases that happen like a maximum of like, I don't know, 5 times in a year, then it's like, okay, it's just individuals fucking up. But it's like every other week you hear about some like police misbehavior, which leads me to believe this is
yeah.
like a systemic thing within them that's causing this.
I mean, I
There
think
must be
there's a lot
something
that goes into it.
incentivizing it.
I mean, dude, it's the whole like the whole power corrupts thing, right? Like the whole. I mean, because like they do have this like sort of like. I mean, they shouldn't, right? It's not like they, because they're not fucking the lawmakers. They're the ones that enforce the law, or or keep the peace or whatever. But
Hmm.
they get this like sense of like, you know, hey, you can't park here, and they start acting like dicks to you for no fucking reason. It's like, dude, like, calm down, all right? I'll move. Just ask me to move nicely, and I'll fucking move. But you started coming up here up to me, like, you know, antagonizing me for whatever reason, and it's like, oh, and you expect me to fucking bow down to you? Like, no, dude, go fuck yourself. I'm gonna tell you that, and then it just escalates and it escalates, and like I said, I do have respect for cops, right? Because there's those guys that are fucking cool, they'll
Hmm.
pull you over. They'll say, for example, you'll be speeding, 5 miles over. They'll pull you over, like, you were speeding 5 miles, but just try to keep it. You can respect those guys, because they're fucking human beings, right? But
Yeah.
it's the individual that comes up to you and he just starts antagonizing you, right? Just
Hmm.
out of the fucking gate. It's like, yo, what's your problem? What's your
Hmm.
problem, man? And I don't know.
And
It's
like, I also think so. Going into the thought process of like power corrupts, I also believe in the idea that it doesn't like power doesn't necessarily corrupt, but it reveals. I feel like
Yeah.
policing needs to get a better way of weeding out the people who go into the job to actually help their communities and how many of them do it for a power trip. Because power doesn't also corrupt individuals. I think it also just gives them, like, it reveals who they actually are. Because you give someone the power to do what they've always wanted to do, and then you'll see them do what they always wanted to do, whether that's good, bad, or neutral. So I think when it comes to a lot of policing, like the stereotype of like police officers are just people who were bullied in like middle school or want to hold power over others is fairly true for like a decent amount
Yeah.
of individuals where they had a bad experience with people where they were powerless, but now they've gotten themselves into a position of power and they're going to abuse it.
Yeah, I agree.
me too. It's definitely policing can definitely be people might just do it just because they have that power hunger. And I really hope that that's not the case for the majority of them, but the more and more news that come out about that type of stuff is just it just is so sad.
Yeah, it really
You know,
makes you like lose hope in people, but you never should. Like, it's easy to just give in to
Yes.
like the despair that all humans are shit or all people who are like different from your worldview or just objectively evil. Like, I have to keep reminding myself that, like, although I disagree with the majority of conservative stances, that all of them can't be like terrible people. Like, sure, they support a party that literally puts in their platform they want to take away my right to get married to the man that I love. But simultaneously, they can't all be shit. Maybe they didn't read the platform.
yeah, I think when it comes to that, it's a lot of like, I agree with more liberal sides, or I agree with more, fucking conservative sides. So then I consider myself a conservative, or I consider myself a liberal, and then you get, you know, like you kind of like have all these like assumptions made of you of like, you're all liberal or you're all conservative, where I think most people live somewhere in the middle. And I think that that's something that we should
Hmm.
kind of keep in mind, that like, for example, like me, I'm liberal when it comes to a lot of things. I believe in gay marriage and legalize drugs and all that shit. But I believe in fucking gun rights. I think this might be a little extreme, but like the death penalty, dude. I don't mind.
Mhm.
I'm for that shit.
I mean, when it comes to guns, the farther left you go, you start liking guns again. So, just a little food for thought, I guess. But
I feel
yeah,
like
I get that.
I feel like guns could be a whole nother topic for a podcast.
Yeah, no, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to change this into a gun debate. I'm just saying, like, I think most people live somewhere in the middle at the end of the day. So, to say, oh,
What
I'm liberal or I'm conservative or I'm this or I'm that, like it's not black and white. I think it all is somewhere in the gray.
what do you think about the idea that that middle area is shrinking over time?
I don't think that's true. I think it's a lot of the whole media news outlets kind of like needing that, like, to keep that fire alive, to keep those clicks coming, those views coming, and they uh you're shown more of like the extremes as opposed to like what's in the middle.
Mhm.
And I think, I mean, I'm a pretty big not super
I don't
huge, but
think
like
it's the middle.
uh-huh.
Continue.
Sorry, I don't think it's the middle that's shrinking, but I think it's the ends that are becoming more extreme. Like just looking at the last presidential election, like
Yeah,
Biden
exactly.
and Trump had very different
Mhm.
sides.
Okay. So this actually brings me like to a thought that I've had for like the longest time. And the fact that like every so often in like an article where I talk about politics, I'm called like an extreme liberal or like a radical leftist or some shit. And
Yeah.
personally, I don't like leftists all that much. Like I looked into their ideology for a bit, and so much of it is just like so regressive. Like I feel like, okay, to be fair, the term leftist is a very broad term because it covers like a lot of like different political ideologies that are like further than like liberal. And a lot of them have like a lot of good takes on a lot of things I've noticed. And a lot of them have like a lot of like interesting ideas and proposals that I genuinely think would work and help a lot of people. However, as a whole, leftists I think are fairly ineffective when it comes to pushing their political agenda because they treat their political ideology more like a social group or like a part of their personality than they do an actual like political movement. But that little rant aside, I don't like being associated with them because of the fact that like I'm not really that far left. Like I don't think that I am. It's just the fact that the people that call me that are so far right that I look extreme to them when they have not seen the actual extremes of the left.
Yeah, dude. I think it's again, it's like I said, you have some liberal viewpoints and they kind of like say, oh, you believe in this, then you must be this, and then that means you must also believe in this and this and this and this and this. And it's like, no, dude, just because I believe in this one thing does not mean I am this. And at the end of the day, dude, like when it comes to stuff like, I don't know, like uh trans rights and gay rights and like all this, it's like, dude, we're all fucking human beings at the end of the day. Like, can we just like agree on that? Can we agree on that? And like, if it doesn't affect you, fuck off. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like that's like my biggest thing when it comes to like me having to like having to justify in my head that like they can't all conservatives can't be shitty people because like I keep hearing them debating the humanity of like trans people or like LGBTQ plus people in general like myself, and it's so like strange. Like it's only recently that a majority of Republicans are now okay with the concept of gay marriage, like 6 years after it was legalized. Like what the fuck?
Yeah,
Like
a lot of that just has to do with the whole like religion thing again, and I mean, I don't want to get into that, but I think that's where a lot of that shit comes from.
even still, the fact that
Yeah,
that's
no,
like
I'm not
even
defending
a
it. Like,
debate.
yeah.
Yeah, the fact is even a debate. The fact that like gay sex was illegal until 2004. Like that's another thing that I find incredibly strange. It just really shows how like quick progress happens, but simultaneously, that was illegal until 2004. We were like kids. And
Yeah. It just
Change
blows
happens
my
so
mind.
fast, yet
not
change happens so
fast
fast
enough.
and yet so
Yeah,
slow at the same time. Yeah.
exactly.
There was this interesting conversation we were having the other day, Kevin, where you said that the fact that like change is so fast sometimes it can kind of make it where that rubber band effect you were talking about.
Yeah,
Um,
when it comes to reactionaries.
yeah.
Yeah. So the point I was basically making with that is that like, so the LGBTQ plus community I've noticed is like a civil rights movement that has accomplished so much in such a short amount of time that the reactionary response to it is so strong because of how quickly it happened. Like you can look at like black rights or women's rights, and that's something that happened over the course of like centuries, like to get to the point where they are now, of like individual black people and women showing their like exceptionalness and excellence in order to like push the nation towards a point where seeing them as equal can get there. And we're still not entirely there yet, but we're so much closer than we were like 50 years ago. And with the LGBTQ plus community, they've managed to take notes from both movements and use them in a really effective manner to push themselves forward into the public acceptance as like on a national level, which is amazing. However, because whenever change happens, there's always a reaction to it. Every action has a reaction. Because of how quickly it happened, the reactionary response is so quick too. That's why every single battle that the LGBTQ plus community has fought has been so like tough on them, because the reactionaries are pushing hard as the gay community is pushing. So I compared it to a rubber band in the fact that like take the LGBTQ plus community as a car, and it's pushing up against a like massive rubber band, and they keep stretching it and stretching it and stretching it and stretching it. And one of two things is going to happen. There's going to be a snap back in which then the community is going to be set back by a lot. That's if the reactionaries win. Or they break through the rubber band and gay people are finally seen as people. So right now, the main hot button issue are trans people and trans youth in particular, which is an issue I can get in on a whole another podcast.
Yeah, that could be for another time.
Yeah, because
There's a
that's
whole lot of stuff to unpack there.
there's a whole lot of
So,
stuff to
yeah.
unpack there, and to do it any sense of justice, I need to talk about it like slowly, because
Yeah.
there's like just so much to it, especially when it comes to like trans youth in particular. Like the reason why the trans community is being attacked so viciously nowadays, and like multiple states are making laws either banning conversion therapy for segments of the population, or just making it significantly not conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is a terrible thing that should be banned. Gender reassignment surgery for people. It's for just like never an issue until recently, because trans people as a concept is just so hard for individuals to understand. Like when it comes to sexualities, that that was an easy pitch for the most part. It was still difficult for people to get their heads around, but when it came to like attraction, that's not that hard to explain. But trying to explain to someone who has never experienced it, or has even talked to a trans person about how trans you feel, or how like trans individuals as a whole feel about like having a mind that doesn't work with their body, it's so complicated that other people, instead of trying to listen, have decided, well, we should just take legislative action against this and see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like I was saying, there's this, for the most part, I believe that there's, we're all somewhere in the middle, whether we lean more on the left or more on the right. I think that for the most part, everybody's like somewhere in the middle. And, I think we should keep that in mind when we're actually talking to somebody about it, because, I think at the end of the day, we can all come to an agreement of like, hey, gay people are people. They just, they find their same sex. Like I said, I don't know. I don't want to go on another tirade again, but
Yeah.
I think that people just need to learn that if it doesn't affect them, it shouldn't matter to them. Like with transgenders, like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't necessarily understand it, but that's just because I've never experienced what they've experienced. I've actually been very lucky to be able to talk to some transgender people. I taught for an interview or for a Courier article, which was very nice. They actually have their own podcast, and they talk about their experiences. And so it was really nice to kind of get a sense from someone who had actually gone through all of this horrible stuff in the world. But it's just, to me, if it doesn't impact you in any way, why should it matter? Like, I mean, I just with like the gay marriage and stuff like that. Why does it matter if two people get married? It doesn't. It doesn't impact you. Why
in
do
the
you care
grand
so much?
scheme of things? How is this hurting you? And then you'll get some convoluted answer of, I don't want my children looking at it or some shit. And it's like, it always goes back to the children too.
Dude, you want to worry about the children? Like, there's so much shit that we're doing, like pouring all these fucking chemicals. We're letting these fucking people pour chemicals into our fucking water supply. And no, that doesn't fucking matter. Let's talk about how two gay guys can't get married. That's what we should worry about. Go fuck yourself, dude. Like,
I feel that energy so much. Ooh, speaking of like our pollution it's actually hurting us all. A study came out recently that has found that there's like this chemical that helps make plastic. And since so many microplastics have gotten into like our everything, including the water supply, they have found that chemical in higher rates has been popping up in human bodies. And that chemical has increased the rate of male and female infertility, and has been shown to shrink men penis sizes.
Yeah,
so
I saw that.
Plastic pollution is probably going to get fixed soon, since now men's dicks are on the line.
Let's hope so, because it's like, dude, like, this is what we should actually be worrying about. This is what we should be like looking at and talking about and exploring.
These are the problems that actually affect everyone, and aren't just some tiny thing that has no impact on anything.
Exactly. See, I think at the end of the day, you know, like,
going to be the end of the earth.
Plastic was so nice when it first came out. It was like this revolutionary thing, and now it's like, oh yeah, there's a million and one things bad with plastic. We should never have done that.
That's the problem, is that they made this thing and then they didn't think about any of the repercussions, and now we are using so many single-use items like straws, masks, gloves, literally every packaging. Everything uses plastic and it doesn't get disposed of properly. And there's literally like, I forget what it's called.
This is an island of trash. It's in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, like right when the pandemic started.
Term for it,
though. Right when the pandemic started, like what really fucking bugged me is like there was plastic gloves all over the fucking, like wherever you would go, like in all these fucking parking lots, there was plastic gloves all over the place. Like people would just fucking take off their gloves and just leave them there. It's like, fucking throw that shit away, you animal.
Yeah, like why just throw it on the ground? I saw that a lot too. And they just throw it on the ground and keep going. It's like you can take that back home and toss it into your trash, or do it in the trash can you literally walked past. Like, come on, people.
Trash cans all over the fucking place.
This is the United States. You can't go like 20 feet without running to a trash can.
I loved how before the pandemic happened, everybody was so worried about the turtles and how the turtles were dying because of straws. And then the pandemic happened and we started using so many more single-use things like masks. Like masks are killing animals in the ocean because they're not, the ties get wrapped around the necks. Yeah. But no one's hearing about that.
There's
Can we
so
even
much
hit a silver lining at this point?
Yeah, so we're nearing the end, and I think what we need is just a little bit of positivity. So, and in that positive note, it's like, in that positive vein, currently, as we have all been experiencing the COVID-19, if you have a loved one, or you yourself have been inconvenienced by the global panini going on right now, I recommend you take solace in the fact that the Biden administration did announce a while ago that vaccines should be available to everyone by April. So sometime this month, everyone should be, like, I think it's like 16 and up, should be eligible in multiple states and hopefully Illinois for a vaccine. And once you get the vaccine, you can start living our lives again. And once that happens, well,
Once that
it's
happens,
going to
we can
be
scream at each other face to face.
exactly. We could all sit in a room and have discussions, and Danny can shout, and I'll shout over him, and Nicole will try to keep us in line, and nothing will get done. And these podcasts will be the same, just in person. But yes, I hope, well, anyone listening to this can take solace in the fact that this pandemic is going to be over sooner rather than later. And that is an absolutely wonderful thing. And what you should always remember is that despite how dark the clouds may be, remember to always search for the silver lining. Thank you for joining us.